Hello and welcome back to Raze Gaming in a new Elden Ring video. Today though, we're talking bleed. What are the best options of 1.09 now that status buildup is reduced on dual weapons back in a previous patch, as well as the strongest status being nerfed a bit more with the White Mask and Lord of Blood's Exaltations no longer providing as much AR boosts. With that in mind, what weapons for this are best? In specific, we're covering what we believe are the 10 best options for unique bleed builds. Unique meaning unique weapons and playstyles, that is. So of course, yeah, we could make a video that's just 10 different weapons doing the same thing, basically using Bloodflame or Seppuku and then using Powerstance attacks, but that would not be very interesting or varied. Still, we have our top picks for that playstyle, but only one main example of that in this list. That way we keep things varied and interesting. So with that explained, let's begin at number 10, which is going to be a perfect example of what I just said. Number 10 is Bloodhound's Fang, which is undeniably an incredibly powerful weapon, and if not the best, one of the best early game weapons in the entire game. This is ultimately a bleed weapon. It's been in a good place for a long time. In 1.09, it's actually even better because it's a curved greatsword. For that weapon type, they increased the speed, range, and recovery time of various attacks, which is honestly insane. So it was previously feeling really strong, now it's somehow feeling even better. And it's one of those weapons that you can buff up in various ways, increasing the bleed buildup with, say, grease, or attaching some fire to it for a powerful element effect. Naturally, you're not usually running this weapon to focus on the bleed aspect, but you can push that part. Ultimately, though, a bleed proc will occur with this weapon enough to consistently proc the White Mask and your Talisman to get the AR boost. Outside of that, you just got a really consistent and powerful weapon here. And the Ash of War allows you to do one single big hit, jump back and avoid attack, and dash back in using iframes for a follow-up attack. That can be incredibly powerful and useful, or a little bit awkward to land in PvE. In PvP, it's hard to land the follow-up dash in because it's so obvious, but that first sort of uppercut jump back, that's a consistent source of damage and will absolutely chunk out someone's health. That plus a bleed proc will kill a lot of players. So it's undeniably very useful, but bleed as part of this weapon is more of a utility to proc the AR boosts. Further, at number 9, we have a similar style of weapon, the bloody Helice, which is a heavy thrusting sword, which has been taking some serious hits over the previous patches, and I reckon it's because of this weapon right here. Phantom range and thrust weapon counterattack damage has been a bit of a menace over the period of Elden Ring. This is what they've been trying to address, and in 1.09, again, they've been nerfing this weapon type, decreasing the hitbox size for various attacks, having already nerfed the counterattack damage in PvP specifically. But that doesn't really stop this thing from being an absolute machine, dealing big poke damage, reaching further than it has any right to, and obviously proccing the bleeds when relevant, which is still very powerful in PvE, where you can actually use the finesse of the jump back Ash of War to avoid attacks and jump back in. It's actually quite nice. It's still undeniably in a strong place despite the pretty consistent nerfs, and as a bleed weapon, it technically does a bit more bleed than Bloodhound's Fang. But those are our two examples of weapons that aren't going to be great for bleed, but are powerful weapons in general. Now we come to number 8 with Morgott's Cursed Blade. This one's a big one in this patch because it's Cursed Blood / Ash of War. They've buffed that massively to increase the projectile generation speed and reduce recovery time. This is really important. It allows for consistent combinations of light attacks, leading into sort of true combos you see in PvP. The projectile generation speed being increased means you're able to get that pop off faster, which means better DPS potential in PvE, leading to staggers more consistently, leading to more DPS and more bleed, or just actually landing in PvP now, which does make a big difference. Also, as again, a curved greatsword, it's got increased speed, range, and recovery time on various attacks, so it's feeling just really good, especially with that sort of true combo you can do. A light or running light into the Ash, into a light, into an Ash, and so on is just ridiculously good. Morgott's Cursed Blade finds itself in a really good place and is actually pretty damn good for its bleed build-up potential because of the much better attack times and recovery time on even the Ash. Above that, number 7 though, is Ghiza's Wheel, which was actually buffed in 1.09 and has been going a bit under the radar. Spinning Wheel, its Ash of War, is that kind of corkscrew chainsaw style attack, and they buffed that to have increased attack generation speed, so it comes out a lot faster on the initial use and is ticking a lot more consistently as well. They also added a roll and heavy attack cancel timing when using the skill, so you can end it with an attack or just cancel out way safer, meaning you don't get stuck in that animation. That's really nice in PvE where this is more relevant, because when you're chaining into an enemy and dealing all that damage but you're about to get hit, you can just roll out of it. It's fantastic. The issue, of course, with this one is not being interrupted long enough to actually get the channel going and hold it for a relevant period. Holding it for long enough to get one bleed is fine, but as you can see, when there's nothing stopping me from just doing it, I can really build up a lot of DPS and a lot of burst in a short period of time. So if you're able to get this off in a nice punish window, it's actually really good. It just can be a bit easier said than done at times. We're actually looking into this a bit deeper though, because we've been really impressed with it, so you can expect a full build video on this weapon in the upcoming days this week. Next up though, at number 6 is a boring one to talk about at this point, Rivers of Blood. Yes, it's fallen quite far. Even though katanas are technically better in 1.09 with better running attack speed and reduced recovery time, that's not really the issue for this weapon. It all comes down to its Ash of War Corpse Piler, which has been heavily nerfed. To get real effect out of this at this point, you must press yourself up against the target so that your weapon is also striking as well as the Cursed Blood aspect of the Corpse Piler. Then you'll deal good damage and good bleed build-up. In PvE, it's certainly still relevant because you can get this off at reasonable range and get that good bleed build-up. The issue in PvP is it's no longer staggering enemies as much, or at all really, so they take a hit and roll out of it and don't get hit by the combo, making it quite hard to really get damage out of this thing in PvP. Still, for bleed build-up, it's relevant, and especially in PvE where you can just press yourself up against bosses and targets and just go to town, it's still relevant and a bit easier to land because you can just time it when you want and say Ghiza's Wheel. But Ghiza's Wheel, for example, probably has better DPS potential when used perfectly. It's an interesting one, but it's in a weird place at this point as Rivers of Blood. Number 5, Mohgwyn's Sacred Spear. Yes, this has been nerfed noticeably. Say the Blood Moon Ritual, the range of that was reduced, but that's not that relevant when we're considering how powerful of a bleed weapon this is. Ultimately, if an enemy is in it, say PvP, it'll still absolutely burst them with bleed build-up, and in PvE, it's the same thing. You can entirely rely on that, especially if they stagger to the animation. Just the Ash of War can still wreck people like Melania, and that is no small feat. They also made this weapon type worse though in 1.09. They took Great Spears and reduced the hitbox size for various attacks, so they've got a little bit less phantom range. Certainly annoying, but it's still very powerful when it does hit, and I think Great Spear is a very powerful weapon type to this day. End of the day though, spamming the Ash of War for bleed build-up is going to be very strong with this weapon. It's still in a good place. Above that, I think, at number 4, is Eleonora's Poleblade, which of course has its own unique Ash of War and unique heavy attack when in two-hand when you do this sort of vertical spin flip, hitting many times successively. Also, Poleblades are just getting better and better every patch. In 1.08, they increased the speed of some attacks and recovery time when in two-hand, perfect for Poleblade specifically. In 1.09, they improved running attack speed and reduced attack recovery time again for twin blades as a whole. So it's feeling like really smooth to use. They're becoming a lot more relevant weapons, and Poleblade is feeling great because the two-handed version has got those specific buffs. The Ash of War, while a bit awkward, can deal a lot of bleed build up if you can land it. Forcing you to dash forward, do a combo and dash back, it's a bit awkward. It'd be easier to DPS consistently if you could just stay on the target, but in that burst combo, you have to admit it does good damage, and it's just feeling better these days. So I'd recommend you give it a try if you haven't used the Poleblade in a while. Now we come to the top 3 though, and this is when we get into things like Bloodflame and Seppuku, of course. At number 3, I think Seppuku is where it should be, and we're using the Scavenger's curved swords with jump spam in particular. The reason for that is curved swords are doing great right now, and the jump attack spam, while nerfed this patch interestingly, is still a great way to get many hits off, get a lot of bleed build up very quickly, and of course Seppuku is going to improve your bleed build up, your AR, and it's very strong in general. It's just not number 1 anymore because ultimately Seppuku costs you a lot of health to actually get going, takes a while, lasts less time, the damage buff is actually worse, and to reapply when it runs out in the middle of a boss fight, not the most easy thing. It takes a bit of time. On the other hand, the Scavenger curved swords are doing fantastic now with increased running attack speed, reduced attack recovery time, and the first attack is even faster for some particular reason with curved swords. They're even better as an option for running something like Seppuku or Bloodflame or whatever. So they are a fantastic option for running Seppuku, probably our top pick for a weapon to run it on in general. Number 2, above that, in my opinion, is still Reduvia and the daggers as a whole. Bleed daggers are amazing because you can deal so much damage with the new power stance buffs at 1.08. You know, you got better attack speed, you've got better range, which is incredible, and obviously recovery time, leading to combinations and getting out when you're stuck in a combo yourself. Reduvia is just fantastic. Such high base bleed build-up, no health cost Ash of War Blood Blade, damage detection on the weapon part of that, or yeah, just rely on the power stance and just go to town with just that. You'll get ridiculous burst in short periods of time. Of course, it's worse this patch like all the bleed builds because of White Mask and the Talisman being nerfed, but it's still so insanely powerful. And it's a lot more consistent than other weapons on this list, like Mohg's Spear, the Ash of War. You have to channel it, takes a bit of time. Ghiza's Wheel takes a bit of time to get going. There's movement with, say, Morgott's or, say, Eleonora's Poleblade. Reduvia is just so much more consistent than all of these, and they weigh nothing at all, so you can run high poise armor so you can actually trade and get the combos off. They're in such a good place, and it's really it's strange to me that claws and fist weapons, they were changed or nerfed in different ways, whereas daggers, which I consider the best, were totally unchanged this patch. So yeah, number 2, Reduvia. Above that, Bloodflame builds. Specifically, Bloodflame and an Asher War that is a chainsaw style, much like, say, Ghiza's Wheel. Perfect example of that would be the Asher War spinning weapon or the Asher War spinning strikes. We've tried this even with like Reaper's scythes, and it's been insane build up. The tick rate at which you get the hits is so fast that the bleed is happening consistently. And with Bloodflame, you're able to work in, say, occult or high dex, and the hits you're doing are also individually very high damage. Combine the two and you reach some of the highest burst and DPS potential in the game. While Bloodflame has been slightly nerfed in the terms of not enhancing Ashes of War to deal ranged bleed buildup anymore, it's still really good on weapon attacks, and this is exactly that. So I do in fact rate Bloodflame higher than Seppuku because of the awkward nature of Seppuku and the reapplying. So yeah, the make your own Ghiza's Wheel, kind of the top tier bleed DPS option. But there you have it. Those are our top unique picks for bleed weapons in patch 1.09. Again though, these are our picks for a nice variety of playstyles rather than, again, 10 versions of a power stance combo spam using something like Bloodflame, Seppuku, and so on. And if there's any bleed weapons or builds that have unique aspects to them not included in this video, then let us know. We'd love to test some more. For now, I've been Holo, you've been you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.